Hello, everybody. Welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed, the live television edition for, what is it, June 12th? Is it
Yes,
June 12th? It is.
is.
June 12th, 2013. Here on, of course, we stream live on IPMNation.com, and we're also on MPTS at the MPTS studio. And we have, of course, my right, little Mel, who you all know.
Hi.
She's here with us most weeks. She's our marketing minion at IPMNation.com, the host of No Boundaries. On the end over there, another gentleman you're probably all very familiar with, Mr. The Honorable Gary S. Hopper. And, of course, Gary and I do Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern here on the show. And we have another gentleman who, some of you always look a little different every time you're on. It's the hair. You always change your hair a little bit. So he may look familiar to some of you, Mr. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery.
Just Dr. Kevin.
Dr. Kevin?
That's just Dr. Kevin.
You're just Dr. Kevin?
Well, you know.
Did you have it legally changed to just Dr. Kevin?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I left the just off.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. No jest involved there.
So you're just
Jest, not just.
Dr. Kevin.
Yes. Well, you know, some people want to call me Dr. Emery, Dr. You know, and
Norm always calls you Dr. K.
Dr. K.
Yeah.
I've been called Dr. K before. Actually, I've been called Special K before.
Really?
Yeah. I was something that was like nutritious and good, you know, good for you.
Well, that's positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think that's necessarily what was an implication, but
Well,
No, it was by the person who was giving it to me.
sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
well, good.
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
Because there's 1,000 different ways that could be.
Yeah. Yeah, she used to refer to me as, you know, that I was her Special K.
Okay.
So I was Special K.
Very nice. Very nice.
Whatever. I was thinking maybe I could get my name legally changed instead of Gary Hopper, Dr. Hopper.
Ooh.
Right?
Like,
'Cause
so
the
your first name would be
would be
Doctor.
Doctor instead
Right.
of going through all that stuff of getting a degree and
Yeah. Then I
Right.
could introduce you as the Honorable
Dr. Hopper.
Hopper. I like it. I like it.
It would definitely be a
Step up.
a movement I would expect from a Politico.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, me too.
You know, let's do something that is technically legal, but not really ethical and moral. But that's okay.
I
Right.
don't allow ethics and morals to stand in the way of advancement, if that's what you're inferring.
That's the
Oh, no.
American way.
Actually, I was inferring that probably you didn't.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, Dr. Kevin, you've always got a lot going on. As anyone, and we put your website up on the screen for anyone who wants to check you out online, mydrkevin.com, because you're a very busy man. You've done a lot of work in the area of, you call it ADDHD, correct?
I call it ADDHD. Yep,
Okay.
and that is definitely one of the things that I've done a lot of work in.
Okay. And I've interviewed you before about this subject, and one of the reasons, too, we asked Gary to come on is because, just a little backstory, Matt Connarton Unleashed existed as a radio show for a couple of years before bringing it to TV. And Dr. Kevin came on one night to discuss all of this, and Gary called in. We were talking about, I think it was how we kind of over-medicate our kids and dope them up on Ritalin because, you know, children have energy, and that's just unacceptable. So we got into all that.
Especially boys. You don't want boys acting like boys, because
Right.
that's troublesome.
They
right
break
there.
stuff and whatnot.
Or they do things.
But did
Yes.
you hear the thing that happened? It was about a little over a year ago now, where I can't remember who it was, but she was a famous designer or owner of a magazine. She was a celebrity of some kind, not like a Hollywood celebrity, but had a celebrity status. And what she did is her 4 or 5-year-old boy wanted to have his toenails painted. So they played a game where they painted his toenails, and she was having a photo shoot done for a magazine, and it showed a picture. And she got more hate mail that this was going to make the boy gay, it was going to send out wrong messages, how could you, we don't want boys to be boys, so we medicate them, but we also want to make sure that boys aren't girls. And that's part of our problem, is we've created this false genderization that happens that immediately sticks us into a box that we can't possibly live up to, so it sets us up for failure. We're set up from failure by the time in today's day and age, by the time the nurse has delivered us and they stamped a gender label in us, we have already started the path of being abused.
It's like gender binary. Our society is all about gender binary. Boys like blue, girls like pink, dolls for girls, sports for boys, and you can't, cross. If a boy plays with the doll, he's a sissy and he's like girly, and a girl has to be ladylike. She can't play with like boys' toys or anything like that.
How much of that is a natural inclination and an understanding of what nature has provided us? And it's a natural outcrop of that. If somebody doesn't fit that natural, the way a child would naturally progress, they're ostracized. In other words, any child, like for instance, when I was little, I didn't have that issue, but as somebody with severe eczema and allergies, and looking different, I was in large part ostracized because I was different, period. It had nothing to do with a gender bias. It was the natural inclination. For instance, in the animal world, which we refer to all the time, it's commonplace for a runt of the litter or an animal that is not up to snuff, so to speak, to be, if not brutally abused, actually killed.
Yeah.
Because they are less than what they need to be for that species to survive.
Yeah.
So if we are going to be absent of God and only be looking at things as a genetic and heretic evolutional process, how can we fight against that? Why should we fight against that? Isn't that normal?
Well, but so what you're saying,
I'm
though,
being a devil's advocate. I'm not agreeing with
I
my
get that.
statement. I'm just politician, so I can't help myself.
I expect you to be a devil's advocate. You're a politician.
Right.
Right? So that's part of it. And so I want to explain this here, which is if a child is given a choice and they reach for a doll and they're said, no, that's your sister's, boys don't play with dolls, there's nothing natural about that.
No.
There is nothing natural that,
Right.
There's this couple that, I don't know if they still have held this, but for the first 7 or 8 months, they have kept the gender of their child secret.
Mm-hmm.
They won't tell anybody. They're like the grandparents, anything. They gave the child a name that could be either male or female. They're trying to beat the genderization thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah, no, I've heard of that.
Yep. And I have not kept up on it as of late.
Yeah.
I did some blogs on it, and referred to it in some of the talks I did. As you know, I used to have my own radio show for 3 years, Outside the Box with Dr. Kevin.
Yes.
So I would keep up on these different things. But it was a very interesting statement, which is we want our child to be treated as who they are as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and we do not want gender to play a role in it. And the only way we can do it is by not letting people know what the gender is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they kept it a close secret. Like I said, I don't know if they still do, but they did for the first. They were 6-9 months, I think, the last time I checked in on it.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah.
You have the other end of that spectrum too. Is I think you pointed out earlier, is boys really aren't expected to be boys anymore. If you look at New Jersey, currently they have the toy pistol buyback program.
Yeah.
Okay, so now boys aren't even allowed to play cowboys and Indians.
Right.
Okay, but the question is, what makes boys want to play cowboys and Indians? It's a fact that they are shown cowboy and Indian movies. They are shown violence.
They're showing that this is what is expected of them, is to be
Yeah.
violent.
To be violent.
I don't necessarily buy that. And this is anecdotal, so it's obviously not scientific. But I think it was John Stossel was talking about that, and he fell into the college liberal mindset that the only difference between boys and girls is what's expected of them. The same kind of thing you're saying. And so what he did is, when his kids were growing up, they didn't watch cowboy movies, they didn't watch violent movies, they didn't give the kids toy guns. He said, and what he noticed as the kids were growing older is that his two sons just shot each other with bananas. There is an inherent difference.
Okay, but how does a child, unless they've seen a gun and seen someone shot, know how to shoot?
There's also the
Yeah, but it doesn't.
environment too.
It's
school, friends.
Yeah.
It's possible they have seen it, But if they're not watching it all the time and their father's not doing it, it is unlikely that they have come to the conclusion somehow subconsciously that that is an inherent part of being male.
But they could also be, like, say at school and with their friends, their male friends, telling them, like, hey, you know, this is what we do at home, and we play cowboys and Indians, and they go home and, hey, Daddy, you know, little Johnny at school likes to play cowboys and Indians. I want to do that now, too, because this is what the kids at school say that I should do.
And I need to fit in.
And I need to fit in.
It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
That pressure.
It's hard, but you know what? What I'd love to do is I'd love to take this whole conversation out of physical gender and go into the energetic realities.
Yeah.
That everybody who walks on the earth plane here has what we call masculine energy and feminine energy. There is no such thing as 100% masculine or 100% feminine. And so there are certain traits. In one of my earlier books, Combing the Mirror, I do a whole section on, you know, the whole feminine masculine balance within the individual. And there are certain things that have a feminine energy to them and certain things that have a masculine. There are some people that are born with a stronger masculine energy, no matter what their gender is, and more with the feminine. It is going to be that you're going to have a higher percentage of males being born with more masculine energy, but not as much as they're artificially pumped up to have, or that there will, you know, more girls are going to be born with more feminine energy, but the numbers are much closer.
Well, I know they did that study on tomboys, and they said it was during the process as the fetus was growing in the mother's stomach, when there was I think instead of a baby girl being given estrogen during one of the sequences, they are given testosterone. And that's how you end up with little tomboys, the little girls that want to play with trucks, and it has no sexual reference. It's not a dictator as to whether their sexual inclinations later on, but they are the same girls that love to go shooting and love to go hunting with their husband instead of.
That's interesting.
So
Well, their husbands are home cooking and dusting.
could be. So I agree. There is a span of how much, you know, masculinity and femininity individuals have.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at it, oftentimes, you know, and I've been in practice now for 23 years. And I do a lot of different things in my practice. And in fact, technically I don't have a practice anymore. I've closed my practice down. It took me over 3 years
Yeah.
to actually slowly, you know, let the people go who
Yeah, you had a lot
move.
of clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because I knew that I was being called to do other things.
Yeah.
And so, but in this, the most successful couples are oftentimes the couples that have a balancing set of feminine and masculine energy. So within their marriage, within their relationship, whether it is a man and a woman, two women, two men, or two in-betweens, it's, you know, if it's a more masculine guy, he does better with a more feminine woman. If it's a more masculine woman, she does better with a more feminine guy. Nothing to do with orientation. Nothing to do with, you know, that. It just has to do with the fact that when you add the numbers up, the couples are always somewhere that are successful tend to be between the 185% to 215% range when you add the numbers up.
It sounds like it ends up being a matter of a balance of energy. Of masculine
you can be a
feminine
little,
energy.
And as we evolve as people, and this is one of the things I teach my students, as we evolve as people and we can consciously make the decision to do this, you know, we get to the place where we are as comfortable in either one of our energies and can be in either one of our energies in any moment. So if you are in a situation where you need more of your masculine energy to do something, it's there. A minute later, if your feminine energy is more appropriate for a situation, you can be there. We are never hamstrung with the reality that you can't do it. People that say that they can't do it, like, oh, I can't be touchy-feely, I can't, you know, I could never be that tough. They have negative limiting belief systems that stop them from exploring that part of themselves, because we can be anything. in this realm.
Right.
We can do anything.
Our limitations are self-imposed.
Yeah, I can teach any of you how to work with a power tool or bake a cake. You really can. It's not impossible for you to learn.
I know about a power tool. I'm very clumsy.
I'm pretty terrible at baking.
Yeah.
I don't think OSHA will allow you to teach me to work with a power tool.
I didn't say that you wouldn't hurt somebody with it,
But
but
I've hurt myself is actually the problem.
He would.
That would.
Yeah.
yeah, but well, and Matt and I have been having these conversations for years. Well, hey, this is what I'll provide: the Band-Aids and the laughter and the power tool, and we'll see how far you get. I didn't say well.
Right. I'll give it all the consideration it deserves.
Start out with a chainsaw and work your way up.
Oh. Oh. Jeez.
No.
No.
But it's.
I'm just trying to help.
I know. You're a helper.
The funny thing is, if Matt was stuck on the Poseidon as it was going down, and he had to pick up a chainsaw and use it, he would actually do it in a way he didn't injure himself. If his survival mechanism was strong enough,
Yeah.
and his desire to live was strong enough, and it comes up against his ability to go, I can't use a power tool, I might break my nail. And if you had to learn how to cook because the food was in front of you and you were going to starve, and if you ate it raw, it would make you sick, you would cook. It's all that driving force. Now, do we
Yeah.
get to have preferences? Absolutely. There are preferences. I'm not going to make you use a power tool. Your blood might stain my clothes.
Right. Yes.
And I don't want to eat a cake you don't want to make because you can follow the
Burn
recipe.
something down.
Well, I'm more afraid that the energy you would put in the cake that you were making would make me sick. I hate doing this. Crack that egg. Now, do you rinse eggs first? Well, there's only a little bit of leftover from the chicken when they laid it.
The shells in here, right?
No big deal.
Calcium. It's good for you.
Yes. Yes.
Actually, yeah, shells are good for you.
It's interesting what you're saying about the whole masculine feminine energy. I'm pagan, and one of the things I believe is that I'm what I call spiritually genderqueer, meaning my spirit and soul is that equal balance of male and female, and I believe in reincarnation, and like you were saying that each person, they might have a little bit more femininity, a little more masculinity, so I think it all depends on what life you're in. So in my soul, I have this equal balance, and whatever life I'm in, I may use a little more feminine, I may use a little more masculine, but it's all there for me to use and to pull on and stuff.
Well, and I would say, based on the pagan philosophy as well as the reincarnation philosophy, which some of paganism, my experience is more in alignment with, and some is less in alignment with. Sometimes reincarnation and paganism go hand in hand. Sometimes they're hanging out on opposite ends of the street. But if you look at it, it would say that our soul, in its energy essence, has no choice but to be 100% feminine and 100% masculine. And we're just choosing what percentage from lifetime to lifetime that we're coming into accessing.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So in other words, what you would like to announce to the world of IPM Nation is basically that you're telling them all that they're, what would you call it, a genderqueer?
Yes, spiritually genderqueer.
A spiritual genderqueer.
It's New Hampshire. We say queer.
Queer.
Not queer.
Queer.
It's queer.
Yeah, it's spelled Queerle.
Well, I'm not from New Hampshire, so
Well, that was clear.
yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't have I wouldn't have guessed that.
I'm Dianic Wiccan, technically, and spiritually genderqueer.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, see, I fall under the Christian idea that it's we're made in God's image, but it basically takes two of us to become more like His image. In other words, it's the two flesh become one, and it's in that capacity that we are more like God, because we, as a couple, you form both the feminine and masculine, and that's I think, like you were saying, that's what the ideal situation is for children. I mean, if you look at, I'm willing to bet, and I haven't seen a study to prove this, but I'm willing to bet if you look at the percentage of children that are on Ritalin or on medication to control their behavior, I'm willing to bet that the vast majority of them are in either single-family homes or broken homes. I am willing to bet that a very small percentage are actually from always intact homes.
Well, it's interesting, and I do have some exciting news about my ADD/ADHD work that I will share in a moment. I did not have the opportunity to click into the latest statistics, but what I can tell you is that there's definitely a higher percentage of kids that are getting diagnosed, that get diagnosed, that tend to come from socioeconomic lower classes that have more money issues, that are more likely to have education issues, that are more likely to be dependent on some form of welfare or state services or support. They are more likely to be single-family homes. You're correct on that.
Yeah.
But part of the reason is also a single parent with 3 kids, and one is the problem child that the school is always calling about or always pushing on it, and the school says, you have to medicate, you have to medicate, you have to medicate. This woman's working 2 jobs, raising 3 kids, and it's more often than not, I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to step into the gender trap here, but it's more likely to be a woman than a man statistically at this point.
Right.
That's doing the single parenting. Those
Right.
numbers are changing, and I'm glad that we have seen an uptick in really shared parenting. They're spending half the time with one parent and half the time we're close, so that's much better than it used to be. But, there's a whole lot of setups, and we financially reward parents to get their kids labeled and medicated. And they only get the reward if they get medicated.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, actually, that there's, there's always a profit motive with everything. And so, of course, it's, someone always benefits from someone getting on medication, whether that individual necessarily needs that medication or not. Somebody's getting a benefit of that, the drug companies, and I mean, that gets into a big topic. But I do want to ask you, because obviously this all relates to, now, and you call it ADD/ADHD.
Okay.
As opposed to, and can you
I do
explain
too.
that? You do too, actually. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You're the only 2 people I know who call it that, as opposed to saying ADD and ADHD.
Because ADD doesn't really ADD is an outdated term now, from what I understand. Like in the psychiatric psychological
Do you guys
world,
read that,
it's-
just a little off subject, but you guys read that article about just recently how what's the company that writes the book on all these terms, ADHD and
Physician, PDR,
the PDR?
physician's desk reference.
There's a whole article about the PDR being kind of a scam, because the more
It's being more and more influenced by the pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
the American Psychiatric
something like
Association,
70
American Medical Association.
no, I get the numbers wrong, so don't quote me, but it's something like 60 or 70% of the people who decide what those terms become in this book have affiliations with a drug company.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's always a profit motive to everything.
No, just a coincidence.
Follow the money.
and we don't expect you to get the numbers right. You are a politician. So now,
I hate the truth.
so because I'm going to tell you why I call it that, but I want to finish hearing why you say that.
Well, because with the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical
Yeah,
Manual of
DSM.
Mental Disorders, things change. Like every time they do a new revision, they change the names, and what was once known as ADD is now known as ADHD PI, which is predominantly inattentive, because there's the 2 types. There's the hyperactive, and then there's the inattentive type. So it's more that ADD is kind of an outdated term. But for me, if you say ADHD to people, in their brains they're just going to think hyperactive. So that's why you kind of add the ADD/HD to it.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you, how many people here remember Paul Harvey?
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big Paul Harvey fan, even though
Yeah.
he's long gone. I didn't agree with his politics, but I loved his setup. Here's the rest of the story, because there's a story behind that.
Okay.
No.
Oh, yeah. The first diagnosis came out with ADD, attention deficit disorder, which in of itself is a misnomer, because people with ADD, HD, have 2 settings. They either hyperfocus or they multitask. So it's not that they can't pay attention, it's that you have to interest them enough for them to pay attention,
Yeah.
or they multitask because basically
They're bored.
you're boring. you're not engaging them enough for
First
them
he
to
called me a
pay attention.
politician. Now,
I didn't say that you personally, but the person that is experiencing it is boring.
when everything is about me, it's hard not to take that as a conclusion.
You know, I'm going to teach you one of my great spiritual paradoxes. You know, the world is all about spiritual paradoxes, right? This is.
I thought it was all about the profit motive.
No.
okay.
It's all
That
about.
was all about the Benjamins.
No. It's all about the spiritual paradoxes. I've actually one of my books I'm working on is called Walking the Knife's Edge, and it's about that true wisdom comes when you learn to live in the paradox of how things are. And one of the paradoxes I teach about is the world is all about you, and the world is not all about you, and both are equally valid and true. And when you learn to walk in the middle of that, you really are move forward into more of your wisdom. I'll let you think about that for a second. So here's the rest of the story. The rest of the story.
No, I'm sorry, I was someplace else. Go ahead.
Maybe you have ADHD.
Can we
Oh, yeah,
ship a
we
coffee
could
to him wherever he is? So it was ADD, attention deficit disorder, and then what happened is then we started moving into attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Now here's my private theory on why ADHD started showing up. American diets got worse, processed foods got increased, the amount of exercise and breaks that were happening in the classrooms got less. The educational system became more outdated of what they were teaching, how they were teaching it. Classrooms got bigger, there was less interaction, and so these kids with high energies on bad diets, not given enough time, started going hyper. And we were also watching more and more of the fall apart of the American family, so they didn't have the support systems they need. And and there's a whole bunch
Something
of other
Gary talks
things
about that a lot.
that
Of American
Oh,
family
yeah.
issue,
falls into that.
If you look at from the 60s when you had most children brought up in intact homes to the no-fault divorce compounded with a war on poverty, you ended up with places like Washington, D.C., where 75% of the kids are in single or broken homes.
I thought you were going to say we're illegitimate children of politicians.
That's probably why they're in single-parent homes.
In D.C., yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they're lust childs. I don't know why they call them love child children. So they're very rarely ever love children. They're really lust children.
But if,
That's true.
But if you look at the kids in D.C., there's more money per pupil spent, I think, than any place else in the country on those kids. But they still have some of the worst outcomes.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, a lot like you're saying. You got a little kid in a very difficult environment. The stresses involved. If you look at ADD, I wonder if it's almost like post-traumatic stress.
No.
No?
No, and because,
Why?
that goes back to the fact of, I'm going to finish this story,
Oh,
and then I'm going to
Hear
get
a
back.
story, Gary.
That's okay. You know what? I'm used to
I wonder
working.
why.
I'm used to working with people that. Where's the rabbit? Anyways, so the attention deficit disorder came out, and I want to really put this in perspective here, which is we had tried to create gifted programs when the American education was falling off as the leader of world education. We started going downhill. We got surpassed by Japan. We got passed by Norway.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We were starting to lose our edge. So George Washington, American Pie, wave the American flag. We're going to take our place back on the world stage. We're going to create these gifted programs. There's going to be small classes, cutting edge technology, the best teachers, and we're going to take our best and brightest, and we're going to put all of our energy into them, and we're going to leave the other 90% kids, 90% of kids, left to rot. But that's okay, because that's the American way. And so as we move this forward. They came up with a list, and they said, we don't always recognize a gifted child, because sometimes a gifted child is a problem child because they're bored in school. So they came up with a list of 10 criteria, which they put out to counselors and teachers, and this is a child that you actually may be a gifted child that might be eligible for this gifted child program. And we're going to educate you on this. Well, then, inflation, deflation, wars, oil in the Middle East, battles, all of the stuff went on, and nobody had funding to fund these programs anymore. And they all sounded good and waved when, it was an election year, but the practicality is, no, I need to build a $50 million thing to Alaska, and I need to give myself a raise, so, we can't afford these. We can't afford to do anything for the kids. No, we have more important things.
There's a pattern of that.
Yeah.
Unfunded, underfunded mandates with education and whatnot.
Yeah. So in comes step 2, which is a few years later. The pharmaceuticals, who in cahoots with the American Psychiatric Association made a decision that the American Psychiatric Association was starting to die. People were getting into talk therapy. They were starting to get into the fact of actually taking change, that spending 30 years on a couch to talk about your mother who was 20 years dead and that you were still complaining about the same thing might not be an effective tool to actually moving forward.
Whoa! They made a lot of money that way.
No, I don't. Hey, there's a lot of Bermuda summer homes that were paid for there. And that's when they really started dancing in the pharmacology, pharmacology field. So now we had this identifiable illness with children.
What year was that?
I don't know the exact year. I can't give you the exact year. I can tell you we're talking a stream of 70s, 80s.
Because I know it was in the mid-70s that I was one of those kids, and what they did for me, or to me, was prescribe Valium.
Yeah, that was before they started coming out with the new stuff.
Was that pre-Ritalin then?
Yeah, that was pre-Ritalin. Valium was given to me. I was so profoundly depressed. You could not believe. I was up to about 50 or 60 milligrams a day by the end of it.
And they say there are no long-term side effects on those drugs, and yet we are.
It's three.
Hey,
I didn't know you invited me on to be a pincushion. I thought it was to.
You know what?
What?
I tease you because you can be teased. Because
No,
you take it in good humor.
I don't. I'm sensitive.
You're sensitive.
He's a very sensitive man.
You're sitting here with Matt. I know that can't be true.
Good point.
So what happens is, out comes the list. They say, okay, we have this thing called ADD, and we have an answer for it, a pill. And so here's the list. And so if these kids have these behaviors, we want to have them assessed for ADD. I used to do a presentation. The gifted child list and the ADD-HD list were identical, word for word. We could no longer fund the mandate, but the pharmaceutical companies could get funded in drugging up and dumbing down these kids that 5 years earlier we were calling gifted. Okay, so now ADD is trunking along. Medications, prescriptions are going up, diagnosis are going up, education is going down, funding is going down. We're watching this stuff go on. And the ADHD shows up because, again, more broken homes, more bad diets, the education system can't manage it. We got all sorts of stuff going on. And we have the height of parents who are now in the me generation. Let's face it. Suddenly, we have to work 2 jobs. Why? So we can have the bigger house, so we can have the nicer car, so we can do this. We're not even going to get into the damage that happens when you ship them off at 18 months for somebody else to raise and then wonder what happened to them. Mm-hmm. Okay, so part of what's going on here now is there's some pushback. Well, why are we medicating these ADD kids? Yeah, they're inattentive. They're the daydreamers, but they're not acting up. They're not causing problems.
Right.
And we're starting to see a few of the side effects kick out.
Wouldn't go that far.
What is the justifiable reason to medicate them?
Yeah.
And then there was somebody who, I always need to go back and verify because I had this and, time goes on and I sometimes lose track of facts I had. But I believe it was a senator's daughter that had ADD that got medicated that had a bad reaction. And so there was this push. Wait a second, we're not going to medicate ADD. We don't. You're going too far. The ADHD, and they're going crazy in the classroom, and, we can no longer, say we're good human beings, so we can't let you slap them around anymore in the classroom as teachers. And so what we're going to do, this is what I call the beginning of the chemical lobotomies for children. 1, 2, 3, 5 pills. I just got something from WebMD that, I get these little things, and I haven't had a chance to blog about it yet, but it was 5 tips about how to best mix your children's medications.
Oh, wow.
Because you're on multi-medication.
That's terrible.
This is a real issue because parents are having a hard time about how to work with all the different medications their kids are on.
That's incredible.
Okay.
It is tough to keep track.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you want to be organized.
Exactly. Maybe you could make some money by learning how to like color code it. So it's like combine red and green is okay, but you can't combine red and yellow, and you know what I mean. So if it's color,
Gary.
yeah. I'm
Rabbit.
trying to rabbit.
So, anyways, so what happens is there's this pushback, and when the next diagnostic, the DMV comes,
DSM.
DSM, the Department of Motor Vehicles, DSM. I don't know why I do that too. The DSM comes out. They have removed the ADD label.
1994, I think it happened.
Now they have ADHD, and there is a subcategory, because I did a whole set of blogs on this. There's a subcategory that actually says non-hyperactivity. Now, they can medicate any kid that's diagnosed with ADHD. There's no pushback. They did this so they could continue.
It's a workaround.
So they could work around it, and they could continue to write prescriptions to any child whose parent was willing to have a prescription written for them.
Wow.
And that's why I say ADDHD, because TV and radio hosts say, well, Dr. Kevin, why do you say ADDHD? And I get to tell this story that maybe some of the apathetic, some of the sheeple will wake up and go, you know what? If they're scamming me like that, maybe I should look a little closer. Do you know that almost all, I would say in the 90 percentile of information that we get from research studies around ADHD were underwritten by the pharmaceuticals?
No,
They're
no.
controlling the information.
Sure.
I had a woman, in fact, you know her, you met her, Donna.
You're so cynical.
No, I'm a realist. Who has a degree in neurobiology, that as I was shifting through some of this stuff and going, this doesn't make sense to me, some of these conclusions. Because of her degree background, she could go back and read all the things, and she would point out, yeah, well, they forgot to mention this, and they didn't tell you this, and they skipped that part on it, and she would come up with all the reasons why what we were presented as the justification of it is a brain chemistry issue, or it's a size within the brain issue, or we are justified in giving children these medications, all which have black box warning labels, which means permanent disability or death has been associated with, okay, that we get this little thing, which is a spin, which makes it okay. And when the black box warning labels came out on ADHD medication, the American Journal of Pediatrics came out in a statement to all of their things saying, ignore those, it's okay,
Really?
keep on writing those prescriptions, they don't know what they're talking about.
Wow.
I'm glad I've never put on meds for my ADHD.
A couple of years ago, Matt and I did a show on bullying. We had Dr. Malcolm Smith from UNH. And
I felt bullied by him.
I felt bullied too, but
Yeah.
I similar to feeling tonight. Anyway, so
Are you calling me a bully?
no, I wouldn't do that. Not overtly. So
Politician.
I know.
Oh, go ahead.
So anyway, he was doing all this thing about these bullies. He did thorough research on all these guys from Columbine to you name it, and like go and interview the families, find out history. Cut to the chase. I turned to him. I said, I heard up at the legislature that a good percentage of these kids are been on medication, were on medication, or just off medication, like Ritalin and things like that. And he kind of passed it off, right, Matt?
Yeah, oh yeah, he totally glossed over
He didn't
it.
want to answer it. And then I followed up. It's one of the few times that I actually picked on one of my guests. I said, no, wait a second. You just did all this research. You know the answer to this. It was over 75% of all the kids that have done all these mass shootings have been on medication.
I don't know when
Yeah.
the number changed, because I haven't kept up on the last 18 months or so. But I know that 2 years ago I was saying on air, and it was a provable fact, that 100% had been on medication.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah, he didn't want to talk about that for some
Yeah,
reason.
I remember that. Yeah.
He really
Now-
didn't want to acknowledge that it was even a variable.
As
Yeah.
we have had copycats, that number may have dropped. I can't believe it dropped down to 75 in the last 18
No,
months,
I'm just.
2 years. But
I think his statement was above 75. So we're not.
Yeah.
But he was so reluctant to disclose it. It was almost
no.
strange.
Yeah.
One of the number one speakers that travels around the country on ADDHD, that does have a book out, I'm not going to mention any names, but is one of the leading speakers, gets invited to all of the medical conventions, the school conventions.
Yeah.
Chad, whose primary funder is a drug company.
What is
Chad is the largest nonprofit organization to support children and adults with ADD.
Okay.
And their largest funder is Shire, who produces Ritalin.
Oh.
Now,
Just a coincidence.
Yeah, and these are the people who, when my first book came out, now my first book on the subject, Managing the Gift, Alternative Approaches for Attention Deficit Disorder, came out in 2000. Shortly after it came out, I was actually interviewed, and I had a reporter refer to me as having the owner's manual for the ADD brain. And I was doing in-services, I was speaking, I was doing some local TV, some starting to do some national radio. Chad had a national convention coming up where they were going to be talking about it, and there was me and this one other doctor, Sidney Walker, who had did a book called The Ritalin Hoax. I believe that was the name of it. I think it was The Ritalin Hoax, and they would not even return either one of our phone calls. They would not even they would not even acknowledge that we exist. At that time, I would actually contact local Chad people to see if I could come speak at meetings, and I was refused. I was not considered acceptable. Here I am with a whole book talking about it as an evolutionary process, broadening the bandwidth of humanity, how to recognize the gifts, all of these positive messages, and Chad won't even acknowledge I exist.
Well, no one wants you disrupting anyone's revenue stream.
So, there's, who knows? But that's just so you know, that's the ADDHD background on that. And some of the bullying stuff, definitely. Now we are also getting into copycats, so again, I don't know.
I got a good one coming up. So you're like the Edward Snowder of the ADD discussion.
Who's that? Edward Snowden?
That's the guy, the
the NSA guy.
The NSA,
Yeah.
the NSA guy.
Edward Snowden.
Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
Snowden. I was going to say, who? Snyder? Snowden?
Snowder's a cool name, though.
Snowden.
Yeah, I just read it
Especially if his
down.
first name is Pig.
Big Snowder. Yeah.
My N wasn't very good.
You mentioned books. You've written a couple of books, right? On this, or I mean, you've written a number of books, but you've written several specifically about this.
I've written a ton of stuff, and let me tell you. And again, I want to touch base because I know that we only have limited time here, and there's a couple of new exciting things I've got coming up that's associated in a second cousin like way with the ADDHD. But I do have Managing the Gift, Alternative Approaches for Attention Deficit Disorder. Then I have Managing the Gift of Your ADDHD Child. And then I do have a DVD that's almost 4 hours of me live presenting information on it that people can go to my website and get. I also have a Daily Practices CD that children or adults can use every morning when they wake up and every night when they go to bed to help them focus, actually help them what I call shield, so they're not taking on stuff during the day. I'm going to take a second because we've been talking so much about ADD and give you my criteria list.
Yeah.
Yeah, and remember, I'm not, and I'm always very clear about this. I'm not a medical doctor. I cannot diagnose, I cannot prescribe. Nobody in your listening audience can walk away from this and say that Dr. Kevin told me to take my child off medication, because I didn't.
Right.
And I'm going to give you some things of how I see ADDHD, and if they make sense to you, then you may want to look at some of my stuff and see ADDHD from the evolutionary perspective and why it's broadening the bandwidth of humanity. Or you can go take an observational test traditionally and get a prescription, which I think they're getting $5 a pill on the street for it these days, because it is the most resold prescription drug on the high school playground.
Oh, no kidding.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can get money for drugging your kid, and then your kid can make money because he doesn't take the drugs, but he sells it to the kids who do take the drugs, because all it is speed. I mean, it comes from the same family as cocaine. So,
Wow.
Entrepreneurs. What do you mean you're talking?
Hey, I love entrepreneurialism.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
That's why I don't like Washington. Oh, anyways. You're not that kind of politician, I know. Concord. Yeah, anyways. So, but the other thing is I have an app coming out.
Really?
Yes. This is all news. I don't.
I'm hearing about this for the first time. So,
What I did was, in order for me to move forward and do some more of the other stuff I do and things like this, one of the things I was challenged was, is there a way where you could be providing things that would help adults and children with ADHD? Because so much of the work I've done in the last 15 years that I've been working in this population as part of what I did or do was so individualized. It was hard to replicate me. And so one of the things is that we've created an app. The app is ready to go, but there's some timing issues. We haven't flipped the switch. It's sitting on iTunes, just ready to go. It will be for iDevices.
Okay. So
it's iPhone, iPad. At some point, we will make something available for non-smartphone people. But the first round out is going to be there. And though there will be 2 sets of reports available, only one may be available at launch. The other one will be coming in shortly. So you get the app. It's called Managing the Gift. It's called the app. If you go to my website, mydrkevin.com, there's actually a place you can sign up that we will send you an email when it's online.
Okay.
So you can go get it in the iTunes store. When you get it, the app itself is free. It goes over some information that I feel people should know about medication, also about different ways to support diet, nutrition, some things, more general information, because it's for everybody. That's how you have to give information for everybody, is more general. I mean, there are some specific things you should look at or consider. But then what I did is, there is a 12-question questionnaire if you choose to want to get. It's called either Paint Your Portrait or Paint Your Child's Portrait. So if you go to the paint, in this case, the child's portrait is all done, and I'm working on the adult version. If you go to Paint Your Child's Portrait, you answer 12 questions about your child. Then you get assigned a shade on the Dr. Kevin rainbow. I have come up with 64 shades on the rainbow. Each shade has within it eight variations of the shade. So what that means is, after you've answered those 12 questions, and you get assigned the shade, and within the shade there's again a variation that you get assigned, you get a 17 to 19 page report on parenting, feeding, recommendations about nutritional additions you may want, how to work with them best in the classroom, how to get to them to do the homework, places where you should be watching as a parent that they're likely to struggle. 17 to 19 pages. The app will generate out over 9,000 unique reports.
wow.
Okay, that's what I spent my fall doing.
Yeah.
Was, I created hundreds and hundreds of pages of content, downloading of what I could do. Sometimes I refer to it as it's a cross, like a it looks at more different criteria than something like a Myers-Briggs, and it has the whole ADHD work that I've been doing for 15 years interlocked in it.
Okay.
And so that the report, there is a cost if you get the report. I believe it's like $20.
Yeah.
It's not like outrageous. People are like,
Yeah. It's affordable.
yeah. I want this information out there. And so the adult one will be following, and it will be about best careers, best ways to structure yourself in the workplace, how to best work with your relationships, love relationships, family relationships, and again, diet, care, feeding is a very important thing. Foods to, that this particular shade, should be more likely to, that they should really try to keep out of their diet, even how often, how many times a day they should eat, the best food combinations of like protein, sugars, carbohydrates that will be better, nicer to their rhythm, so that they're less likely to go through the diet. Because one of the things, I call it managing the gift. And the thing is, there are so many things out there between diet and environment and just lack of understanding that exacerbates the gift into a curse.
Can you talk, because we're running low on time, but can you talk about why you call it a gift? Can you expand on that? Because that's very important.
Okay. Well, first of all, as I say, it's part of the evolutionary process. It became an evolutionary process in the early to mid 1800s. They were the architects of the 20th century. Einstein, Edison, Graham Bell, Ford, all the way up through Eleanor Roosevelt today to Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, Michael Phelps. Okay. And I call it an evolutionary process because when we look at what there has always been those individuals throughout history that seem to pick it up and turn it like a Leonardo da Vinci or a Socrates or a Newton, but they were scattered and they didn't seem to be an increasing number. Now it's like we have an increasing number, and each generation prepares the next generation to go twice as far as that generation went because it gives them more to work with. So we see this is why the 20th century was the fastest moving century in recorded history as far as what we accomplished. And the 21st century is going to make the 20th century look slow by what we're doing. And this is all thank you very much, ADD brains, because this is what that's what it is. Okay, these are the people in all areas, and that's the other thing that makes it evolutionary, because it's in all the areas.
Yeah.
Now, this is how I always find it very interesting, because this is the spin part of it. How are we going to look at the behaviors that we're identifying as a pain, and who is it a pain to? A pain to a broken education system? Let me not cry too many tears for this one.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Not that there are not brilliant teachers.
Sure.
There are absolutely brilliant teachers. And there are actually people out there that I meet every day that I thank God are out there working with our kids. And I want to acknowledge those people, because there's no black or white hat here.
Yeah.
But, so, the first thing is, this is the things I look at, the criteria, and that's going to wrap into why it's evolutionary. So we're talking about highly intelligent, highly creative, naturally rebellious. Now, this naturally rebellious comes because of the high intelligence. Now, that high intelligence may be spread out, or it may be focused in on one or two areas, or even a single area, like an idiot savant, as we used to call. Somebody was really, really bright in one area.
I'm halfway there on that one.
Savant, right?
Yeah.
So, see, that was nice. Anyways, so they're natural rebels because they're always looking to make things better. The only way to make things better is to get rid of the old things. If you say to the ADD-ADHD mind, well, it's just always been done that way, it goes, oh, great, a challenge.
I want to share. Yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be a better way to do it. If you've always done it that way, there's got to be a better way.
Right. Right.
Naturally justice-oriented, and it's funny. Sometimes you will see ADD-ADHD people who will stand up for themselves, and they can get cranky, and they're out there in that, the different shades are more likely to get cranky than others, justifiably so, but still cranky. But across the boards, if there's somebody that they have attached to, somebody that they see, somebody who they think is not being treated fairly, they will defend them. They will stand up to the teacher. I had more when I was working and I worked more with kids and stuff like that. Those kids would get in more trouble for defending somebody that the teacher was picking on than defending themselves.
Oh, that's interesting.
So we have that part of it. Naturally empathetic. So they have to be careful, but they can take on the emotions and the energies of the things around them as a way to actually be of service. They are, and the thing is they'll always be somewhat childlike. There's always going to be an innocence, and part of that is because they're not going to ever get why we do the horrible things we do, unless you drug them up and make them apathetic. They'll understand that we have people that are doing child slavery, but they're never going to get it. They're never going to take it in. They're never going to really let them make them jaded. There's always going to be a little bit of wonder about them, a little bit of hope. There's that thing. The other thing is they literally think differently. And this is the part I can't get people unless they are ADD-ADHD, and usually they talk to me for a couple minutes, they go, oh my God, you're right. Or people that work with them very closely, is they think differently, which make them better problem solvers. They look at things, they pick it up like a snow globe, and they look at it like this. They play with their information like small children play with food. So they're in it, and they're part of it. And I've identified in the book that, they have eliminated audio, kinesthetic, and visual as three learning styles. They're either kinesthetic audio or they're kinesthetic visual, because they must play with their brain food.
I'm very kinesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But whatever your other one is, you're not going to be kinesthetic. You're going to be kinesthetic audio or kinesthetic visual. Yep. And you're going to play, and you have to play with knowledge, with ideas. You have a desire to invent, to create, to co-create, to recreate. When you find something that fascinates you, you either, first of all, you want to master everything that's out there. You can't help yourself when you're interested. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're either going to try to make it better, or you're going to teach it and share it. And you can't help yourself. Because, again, and this is what has always been the shame. These children and adults love to learn.
Yeah.
It's just the education system that's toxic to them. And partially that's because the education system doesn't know how to teach them. And I used to teach my kids. I'm going to teach you how to teach them how to teach you Because they don't know how.
Yeah.
And when you have 30 kids and only one aide and you're not funded, and then you have something like, Every Child Left Behind Act, which brings us down to standardized mandatory, moron testing. That's nothing but vomit-based education systems and teachings.
Talking about that tonight.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Common Core takes it the next notch up.
Yeah.
So, you look at that, and of course these kids are going to act out. Of
Right.
course they can't sit there.
And just to clarify too, what you mean by the vomit method, it's like the teachers give the kids the information and then they have to vomit it all back up in the right order, and that's how it's determined. Okay, you pass, you go to the next grade.
We teach them.
It's called the MCAS in Massachusetts.
Yeah. Well, we teach them what to think, not how to think.
Right.
We do not teach critical thinking skills. But then again, we do not want our children questioning except the
Authority.
questions
Right.
that we are giving them specifically and then telling them the right answer.
Right.
And we present lots of subjective information as if it is objective.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's worse than that. This new Common Core will actually, you remember how they used to code kids?
Yep.
This is going to be coded on the federal level and data banked.
That's terrible.
Yep. Well, they used to just write it in tattoos in a place called Germany and put a little number on you. And
No, they
it's-
can fit that information on a microchip.
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
You're good.
yeah.
You're
and they're
good.
going to start putting it under their skin. So, and must medicate, dangerous, too smart,
Yep. Exactly.
A threat to
Exactly.
the system.
a threat to
Exactly.
the system.
Well, we got to wrap up, but Dr. Kevin, thank you so much. It's been too long.
Yeah.
It's been too long, so it's great to have you here today. MyDrKevin.com is the website. Definitely check that out.
And when you go on it, you're going to see what is your GPA, which is greatness, potential, actualized. That's all my new work. We didn't even
Okay.
get to it, but just to let you know, the ADD stuff is there still.
Fantastic.
Journey to Greatness stuff and the synergetic catalyst stuff, the work I do with businesses.
Awesome. Thank you again. Gary, thank you so much for being here today.
Matt, I know you from someplace.
Yes, I'll see you at 6 p.m. And on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, of course, Mel, thank you.
Welcome.
Mel on No Boundaries, Monday night on IPMNation.com. And if you're watching on MPTS, Inside Story is next. That's a great show. I'll see you again at 4 p.m. on Norman Friends. Take care, everybody.